All right, welcome to a live episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are going to be doing a live Best Bowl Mania draft on Underdog. Starting this live episode, we're a little bit late getting started. Was hoping to get started a little bit earlier, but I've got two kids under two right now, so getting them down to bed, you don't necessarily always know what time they're going to go down. And my son tonight was being a little extra difficult. He kind of just spent a little while just kind of staring at me. So, I was able to kind of get him down and get here on the live show. But we are going to be doing a live Best Bowl Mania draft. It is Underdog's flagship contest for college football best ball that started this week. We had the strategy video early in the week, and we didn't even know the Underdog was going to be dropping it the next day. Now the draft is live. I've had a few so far that I've completed. I've also got some slow drafts that are in progress, but we're going to be giving kind of a lot of my thoughts on drafting so far, and it, kind of is kind of going to come organically as we go through the live draft itself. Yeah, see Darren in the chat there. Yeah. It just, you never really know how it's going to play out. Like especially when they're young. Some nights my daughter, she just conks right out, and like I'm done in 10 minutes. Sometimes, she wants me to do this, do that, read this, and I'm up there with her for almost an hour. But it was the son that was the difficult one tonight. And he's only about 2 months old, so I can't give him too much of a hard time. But what we're going to go ahead and do is that we are going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go ahead and join a Best Bowl Mania. Oops, I clicked the wrong one. We're going to go ahead and join a Best Bowl Mania draft, and kind of as it's waiting to fill, like if you guys want to draft it with me, go for it. Obviously, like we're not going to be colluding or anything like that. Like we don't want to get the contest canceled. Going to be drafting our teams how we want to draft our teams. But if you guys want to join and draft with us here on the stream, you absolutely can. No problem with that. We're waiting on 3 people, so there's spots if people want to join. What I did want to talk about, though, was kind of just like a few kind of like rules to live by so far from what we have seen on Underdog. With kind of how everything's going, QBs are not going as fast as they were last year, but I do want to have at least one quarterback and one running back through 3 rounds. This is just kind of how the draft's working out. I really think there's a big kind of cliff at quarterback after 3 rounds, and I really want to make sure that I get one of those quarterbacks in the first 3 rounds. With it being a super flex format, I definitely want to make sure that I'm going to be strong at quarterback. And I feel like it's easier to chase if you have one in your pocket and kind of just fire some bullets later. I think there's a lot of great late quarterbacks that are available, so I don't have a problem chasing it, but I want to make sure that I lock up the elite one. We talked about on our strategy show. Check that out if you have not already. Check out the strategy show. We talked about how if you're drafting one of the top quarterbacks, you're not going to need to get very many weeks out of your bench quarterbacks, right? There's not going to be many dud weeks from a K Klubnik or an Arch Manning. So if you're getting one of those studs, it really lessens the need to kind of, get right or to kind of hammer early the quarterback position after that. Also, one thing I think I'm seeing a lot of times here in these drafts so far is I want to stack whenever it is reasonable, right? Like I'm not saying to like go out of your way to stack every quarterback or stack every situation, because in college football, we've got a lot of mobile quarterbacks. We've got a lot of offenses with really spread out target shares that you don't really feel the need to stack every offense. But like with the format being best ball, if I draft Arch Manning and I'm saying the Arch Manning is going to have a 30 fantasy point week, well, he's going to be throwing to somebody, right? It might be Ryan Wingo. It might be Emmett Mosley. It might be the tight end Jack Indries, but it's going to be one of them. And so if I'm able to get multiple options on my team, then that's going to be able to capture that ceiling game and elevate my ceiling as much as I absolutely can, right? Especially with late quarterbacks, because if I'm drafting a 3rd or 4th quarterback and there's a situation where they're going to be used, then it really feels like you're going to want to capture that ceiling game. And the way you're going to capture that ceiling game is by stacking them with a wide receiver or a tight end as well. So I'm going to stack a lot of situations here in this draft. Now, Quick update on Underdog. We are waiting on one more person. So if you're watching and you want to draft with us, you can. I see we got a few people in the comments. The Fantasy Football Garage, aka the Candyman, what is up, man? Great to see you here. If you have not already, go check out his content, the Fantasy Football Garage. He does a ton of NFL best ball drafts. The guy really knows his stuff. He's really fun to watch, and I cannot recommend him enough. And there might be a collab in the works there, so just stay tuned on that. And then C Slave, seen the comment, says, want to thank you for your videos and rankings. Feel like I can navigate through the first 4 to 6 rounds, but after that, I'm clueless. Yours have been a big help. So with that, the late rounds, to me, more often than not, are about roster construction because you're not going to know all the players. ADP is getting sharper. So like if you want to just go by my rankings or go by ADP and kind of play close to the vest, you can. But I really think in late rounds, it's more important than anything else to get your roster format correct, which is something that we talked about on the strategy show. I believe I can pull that up. Yeah. 4 to 6 quarterbacks. I'm even going to up this and say 5 to 7 running backs. I think the running back is just very important this year. And I think you really want to set yourself up to be starting a running back at the flex position. I think that's just a safer kind of build is to plan to be starting your running back at flex. And then it really, after that, you're just hammering late receivers and only getting 2 tight ends. But like I said, in the late rounds, get the format or get the general build correct. And I think everything will kind of come after that. I'm seeing a lot of teams in these lobbies that I'm drafting that I can just look and know that the teams are going to be drawing dead because they've got, 3 quarterbacks or 4 quarterbacks or 10 running backs, right? Like if you just have this general template right, you're going to be giving yourself a live opportunity. Now, Darren's comment brings back to one of the things we talked about on the strategy show as well. Are you lower on SEC and Big Ten quarterbacks because of potential tougher defenses? So I think that there's a macro discussion and a micro discussion to be had there. From a macro perspective, and we talked about this on the strategy show, I really think that you want to balance out your roster from different conferences and different types of teams, right? So, for instance, a team like, let's say, Oregon, that's going to be playing the Oregon School for the Blind in week 1 or whatever, right? Like they're going to have an incredibly weak non-conference schedule. Guys on Oregon are going to score a big portion of their points in the non-conference part of their schedule because that they're just playing weaker competition, right? Whereas you get guys in the ACC, like take a Clemson. Clemson has a really tough non-conference schedule. They play LSU in the non-conference. They play South Carolina in the non-conference. But in conference, they're playing the weak ACC, right? So a guy like Cade Klubnik is going to score a lot of his fantasy points in the conference portion of the season. So I really feel like having a balance there is probably like the most appropriate way to go, and just not necessarily zeroing in on just one conference. I do think that I would give an edge, like in terms of a tiebreaker, I would certainly give an edge to an ACC or a Big 12 quarterback, but I definitely think that there's an argument to be made that some of these quarterbacks like a Lenora Sellers, like an Arch Manning, like a Dante Moore at Oregon or a Damon Williams from Washington, there's an argument to be made that those guys are going to score their points from a different portion of their season than some of the guys in the ACC and the Big 12 are. All right, we're waiting on one person on Underdog, by the way. Ken G in the comment says, jumped in a bunch of slows and I'm taking my time with each pick. Think there is an edge for fast drafts because players aren't as sharp. Well, I personally love the slow drafts as well. Like I'm somebody that I'm like the weird slow drafter that like when I get the notification on my phone, I like immediately open up and like look at it for like 2 to 3 minutes and then make my pick. I'm not using my whole timer. Sometimes like it might take me longer to get to my phone. Like I was in a slow draft today when I was mowing grass, and like when I got in from mowing grass, got my shower, that was when I looked at the draft. I don't necessarily know if there is an edge to it. What I've noticed in the slow drafts is that everything tends to go by ADP a little more. And I don't know if that's a sign that players are sharper or not sharper, but it tends to be a little chalkier and a little more predictable, if that makes sense. So in terms of like, will the winner of this contest come from a slow draft or a fast draft? I got no clue. I think there's more fast drafts than slow drafts. So I think in terms of a mathematical projection, it's probably would come from a fast draft. But I don't know if I would necessarily say that they're sharper. I feel like when I'm in a slow draft, I feel like I get the chance to be super locked in and go through the information and what's at hand and make a solid selection. But I'm also somebody that I feel like is pretty well researched, pretty well read up on these guys. And I know the players that I'm looking at, right? If somebody's not, then they're not going to be able to use that time for anything productive, if that makes sense. Fantasy Football Garage, appreciate the kind words. Huge fan of your videos. Of course, man. And then Michael Melcher says, as someone who grew up in Louisiana, I appreciate that you properly pronounced LSU. I'll take it. All right. Still waiting on one more person in the draft. I kind of thought it would be filled by now. I feel like I did a pretty good job filibustering there to get this thing filled. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk a little more strategy then while we're at it. So like I said, the two like absolutes that I want to hold myself to, I want at least one quarterback and one running back through 3 rounds. I'm stacking whenever it's reasonable. I'm going to throw in one more in there. I'm going to say late stacks are, let me think the right word here. Late stacks are always an option, right? So like I said, if you're getting a guy that is your 5th or 6th quarterback and you need a receiver, right? Like you can get a guy from that guy's team, because if that quarterback's going to be starting in your lineup on any given week, that receiver is probably going to be carried with him, right? So late stacks, I do think are always an option. Also, I do think that it would be great to have like some sort of like bye week article or bye weeks database or something like that to look at as you're drafting to make sure your bye weeks match up. Spike Week had one of these for 2024. I don't know if they're going to have one this year. I might actually make one myself at some point if I get the itch to do so. All right, so we are starting the draft now, y'all. We got 12 people in here. Oh, Michael says he got in there. Cool. And then Darren says, is Underdog only doing one college best ball? Last year, they did a $3 contest called the Tailgate, which I did a lot of. I love that contest. I thought it was a great format. And then they also did like a $20 contest called the Transfer Portal. Don't quote me on the dollar amount, but they will probably roll out some bigger tournaments. But Best Ball Mania is probably the one that they're really hyping up. And I would anticipate they're going to be looking at the fill rate on this one to make sure that it's going to fill before they start opening up the others. All right. So if anybody in the chat is in here, let me know what pick you got, because I'm curious. So for me, I personally haven't had a pick this high yet. I'm not the biggest fan of having a high pick in these drafts. I don't feel like there's as much an advantage for picking high, and I feel like you miss out on a lot of the good quarterbacks unless you pick one. And I'm not a big fan of picking one of those quarterbacks early. So I am going to trust my ranks. I'm going to go with Darius Taylor, number 2. And by the way, if you would like access to these ranks, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike'sMoneyPicks. Link is in the description. I'm not going to claim that these ranks are like the end all be all, like 100%, like we'll like just load it in the draft and let it auto draft, but like it's definitely something that can help you. There's some guys that I'm way different on ADP on. I don't necessarily even always draft those guys like at a big difference, but it definitely kind of helps me know where my guys are at and who I've got coming up on the board. And sometimes I'll even like sort it by ADP and compare to my rank and use that as a tiebreaker. All right. So Michael says he got pick 3. Cool. So that presents us with an unfortunate situation where if I'm going to be talking about somebody, you're going to have the opportunity to take them right in front of me. But that's all good. I don't mind talking, and I'm not going to take anything too personally in here. So let's see what we got for the rest of this round so far. So we've got, maybe this view's a little better for everybody to view. I've got, so Michael took Jeremiah Smith. I like it. I would still like, when I was talking earlier about the one running back and one quarterback through 3 rounds, really, I don't mind taking Smith or Tyson in round 1, but if I do take Smith or Tyson in round 1, and I have seen scenarios where Tyson goes at pick 9 like this one, I definitely want to make sure I get quarterback and running back after them, because personally, I'm not like the biggest fan of some of these round 2 and round 3 wide receivers. After that, draft's gone pretty chalky. All 3 of the big 3 quarterbacks have gone. A lot of the top running backs have gone. And honestly, I feel like the way drafts are set up this year, I feel like the nuts would be to be like a middle of the first round pick and get Tyson or Smith at like pick 5, 6, or 7, and then like find a way for one of these elite running backs to fall back down to you, right? Because what we're seeing right now is now that Claiborne's been taken, the last of what I would consider to be the elite running backs is Anthony Hankerson, and he's going to be gone potentially with the next pick. I really think that if you can be a middle of the first round pick and somehow find a way to get like a Hankerson or a Claiborne or like that in the middle of the round, I think that that's a really good setup. Like right here, Z Charters, he's gotten Tyson and Hankerson. Yeah, that's a really good start. Like I really like what he's got going there. I feel like the way the board shook out, it really played in his favor. And honestly, maybe a little bit of a hot take. I haven't drafted Ryan Williams once. I don't know if I will at his current ADP. He's going to have to start falling a lot more for me. I am very much concerned about Ryan Williams. A lot of his production last year was from one big game, and that, granted, we all saw it. It was a spectacular catch and run for the win against Georgia, but he's entering year 2 at Alabama with Ty Simpson at quarterback, and people are saying that that's going to be an improvement over Jalen Milroe, and I'm like, hey, if he was an improvement over Jalen Milroe, why didn't he start last year? Right. So I am very much concerned about that. I'm concerned about the inconsistent volume that he saw. There's other legitimate targets in that Alabama offense also. So I'm just not the biggest Ryan Williams guy. I would not take him at the start of the second round. I get the argument. He's a super talented true freshman, but I'm not going to be that guy. All right. So very much draft going according to plan so far. I was able to get Haynes King with my second pick. I love Haynes King this year. He is a primarily running quarterback, which is always gold in college fantasy. And he showed last year that, like, as long as he's healthy, he's kind of like schedule agnostic. He had great games against some of the better teams in the ACC, great games against, some considerably tougher defenses, right? Okay, so now I'm back on the clock. Do I want McAllister or Hardy here? You know what? I'm going to go McAllister. I really like Eric McAllister. That might have been considered a slight reach. Yeah, but I really like Eric McAllister. That TCU offense is a team that's going to throw it all over the yard, and he's going to be the number 1 receiver there this year, like no bones about it. Last year they had Jack Beck and they had Savion Williams. They got to replace both of those guys. McAllister was kind of their third option last year. Now he's going to be the first option. He's used to being a wide receiver 1 from his time at Boise State. He's a guy that I have ranked considerably ahead of ADP, and I really don't mind taking him there at the 3-2 because I've accomplished my goal. I got my quarterback and my running back early. I'm able to get him in round 3. And then I really like what Michael did there. 1 pick behind me, kind of, we were talking about him filling that spot. He got Jeremiah Smith, got John Mateer, no issues with taking Mateer there. And then Ahmad Hardy, really solid pick there after the turn. Now, I will say what I do not want to be is, and this is what makes this format hard, right, is Lake Show with the number 1 overall pick. He took a guy that I think there's a reasonable argument for, Desmond Reed. I think there's a reasonable argument to take him number 1 overall, right? Cam Coleman, 24, no issues with that pick as well. But now if he wants to do the same thing that I was talking about earlier, 1 quarterback and 1 running back through 3 rounds, now because we both took King and Mateer, now he's basically got the choice between Robertson and Nussmeier at the turn. And that's kind of tough, right? Like that you're definitely reaching on ADP. You're definitely giving up some value. But if you wait on quarterback there, it's a big old teardrop after that pick. Because honestly, I think that there's a big teardrop after Robertson and Nussmeier. I think Levitt is a tier down from those guys, that personally. Now, if you wanted to make the argument that it happens after Levitt, I get that as well. But it just makes it really tough because if you don't take a quarterback there like Lake Show did, then you end up with maybe you get Hoover or more to fall to you, or if not, you're settling on Kevin Jennings or Austin Simmons as your QB1. And I like Austin Simmons a lot, but I don't know if I want him to be my first quarterback taken, right? So now we're seeing the draft fall back down. Let's catch back up on the chat. So Darren says, thoughts on Penn State running backs? How soon? Too soon? Nick Singleton, solid 2nd round pick. Katron Allen, I would say if you've already got 3 running backs, like fire away. He's not a guy that I would want to rely on to start on my lineup week in and week out. Let's see where I have him ranked. Did I pass him already? Maybe I did. Yeah, my rank 100, ADP 84. Maybe I'm a little harsh on him at 100. He just doesn't really possess a whole lot of weekly ceiling if Nick Singleton is healthy. But if Singleton were to get hurt, that's a lot of contingent value right there. Dang, picks coming back up to me pretty quick. So a lot of good running backs gone. Man, there was a run on running backs in that 4th round as I was talking. Okay. There's a lot of guys that I like, though. Burks there, that's a solid pick, especially when you got Mateer. Do I want to go ahead and pull the trigger? Yeah, you know what? I'm going to pull the trigger on Hoover. Barely got that one in. Whew, I kind of cut that one close. So now I'm going to take whoever falls to me. If Soel falls to me, I'm going to take him. If not, yeah, that's going to be the play because I really have a huge ranking disparity between Dylan Jones and Kyson Brown. I actually have a pretty good one on Soel as well. But I'm going to wait for them to fall to me. I'm kind of light on running back, but I'm really hoping that by the time the next turn comes back down to me, that I can get some of these guys that I have ranked considerably ahead of ADP. We'll see if that happens. I like Soel a lot. So Iowa State last year, they literally consolidated their passing offense through 2 players, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, and they accounted for about 60% of their overall passing production. Soel is a guy that's coming in as a transfer from ECU that was really good. Like I know not a whole lot of people watch the American Athletic Conference, but I do because they were on some DFS slates on Thursday and Friday nights, and that was when I'd watch a lot of college football. And so he was really good at ECU, and he could absolutely come in and command the same target volume as Higgins and Noel did, and he has less competition because both those guys are gone, right? So, like, honestly, if you were to just plot me in a draft from last year and say, hey, where should Jalen Noel or Jaden Higgins go? I'd say about pick 50 where I took Soul is pretty reasonable, right? So I'm pretty happy with that selection and getting him there. I know I have him ranked way ahead of ADP, but I was able to take him right around ADP, so I'm getting decent value. All right, let's look at the big board here. Austin Simmons there at 52. I like that pick. I like Simmons a lot. I think he's kind of one of those mid-range quarterbacks in here that's pretty solid. I've already got my 2 starting quarterbacks, though, so I'm really not going to be. Oh, they show the bye weeks now. No, they don't. Never mind. I was seeing the pick like where it says 3.3 right here, and I thought that was their bye week. Like because I saw Haynes King 211. I'm like, oh, that's his buys. No, I was wrong. Dumb moment there. Anyway, let's catch back up with what we got going on. Fairly expectable. Like some of these running backs that I like are probably going to fall back to me. Darrell Gill going 55 is interesting. So like Syracuse is an offense that they're going to throw it all over the yard. That's what they did last year. And they had, gosh, Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord was the quarterback, and they had Trevor Pena, and they had Jackson Meeks, and there was another receiver that I played all the time in DraftKings. His name is escaping me. I know they had Aronde Gaston at tight end. Anyway, that was an offense that threw the ball around a ton. And now they've gotten Darrell Gill as like their returner, but they've gotten all these transfers in, including Javante Cook from Texas, who is like supremely talented. If Gill ends up being the wide receiver 1, which their beat reporters seem to think that he will be, then that's a solid pick, but it's not something that I would gamble on this early in the draft personally. Bo Bud with Kyson Brown there, that's a ball-knowing selection. I like Kyson Brown a lot. Arizona State's an offense that loves to build around one running back, and he's good. He's real good. So I think he's going to be the guy there. Kanye Udo just transferred there from Army. I think Brown is more of the guy that is going to be their guy, though. Really looked solid when filling in for Scadaboot last year. All right, so what I'm looking at here, Emmett Johnson, there's a really good pick. I'm going to take Yassine Willis. Actually, do I want Yassine Willis? Yeah, I want Yassine Willis. I kind of think I can get Dylan Jones coming back around, right? Yeah, that's going to be the plan. You took Adam Randall. I actually don't mind that. Yeah, and I'm looking at ADP, and like I know Dylan Jones is like way down there. Actually, I'm going to try to push it on Jones. I know, famous last words, right? I like Kevin Coleman. Yeah, we're gonna do that. And I'm gonna hope Dylan Jones falls back to me. If he doesn't, oh well, I'll be all right. But Kevin Coleman is kind of like the Chase Sowell, similar concept, right? Like he's coming in, transferring into Missouri from Mississippi State was his last stop. I don't know. Kevin Coleman's been everywhere. But now he's coming into Missouri. That's got to replace Luther Burton's, got to replace Theo Weiss. A lot of vacated targets, and Kevin Coleman's quite talented. I think he could step in and fill that role. I like him a lot. Now from here, I'm in a situation where I've got a 2-2-3 so far. I could take a tight end, but like, I don't know. Tight end just seems so barren. So C Slave in the chat says thoughts on Sadiq. Not sure how much higher he can go realistically, but I'm an Oregon fan. They're talking about getting him 60 to 80 receptions, and he's super talented with the ball. Yeah, I think he's getting drafted and like about where I would. He's definitely the tight end one. He's definitely that. Like if I were you were to tell me like, hey, take any tight end on the board, that's my guy. But I don't know if I would really take him much earlier than ADP where he's at right now. And I do think he's a guy that's really talented. He's a guy that could absolutely be a difference maker in this, because for the most part, tight end is just like this dud position that nobody really does anything, right? Like last year, if you didn't have Tyler Warren or Arondé Gadsden, you were just basically hoping and praying for a touchdown on any given week from your tight end. So I kind of like the idea of getting a Sadiq and just hoping that that's a big difference maker. I'm not in a rush to really take anybody after him, though. Darren in here saying, I like the Clemson receivers. I do too. I like them a lot on Klubnik stacks, because my worry with those receivers is that there's going to be such even target shares around the group, right? That you're just never going to know which one is going to go off. And that makes it kind of really hard to take one of them in a vacuum. But I love the idea as a stack. And so if I have Klubnik, and I don't think I've gotten a Klubnik team on here yet. If I have Klubnik, I'm going to be hammering those Clemson wide receivers, because like I said, the whole concept is you really want to capture the ceiling games, right? Like when a quarterback goes off, you want to really maximize the points you're getting from that. All right, so now we're getting closer and closer to my pick. The guy I've been talking about, Dylan Jones, is still there. If Dylan Jones gets drafted, I'm going to have to do some figuring out, but that's the plan for now. I'm seeing these other guys that get taken, and like I know that I'm still probably going to be drafting Dylan Jones ahead of ADP. Maybe I should have taken him sooner. I don't know. But I like him. I just like him. I think that he's going to start for Wisconsin. They're getting away from the air raid that they did last year with Phil Longo. I think that they're going to be a run-heavy team. So I'm going to take Dylan Jones here. Ooh, that's actually a really good idea in the chat that that Darren has. It says Pavia Stowers stack. Now, the interesting part of that is, like, believe it or not, those two actually both started their careers at New Mexico State. And Stowers was the backup quarterback and ended up becoming a tight end. You know what? I got 3 at both positions. Now's a good time to take a tight end, or I'm sorry, take a quarterback. I'm going to go Pavia. I think that's as good a time as ever to take a tight end. Because I really like some of these receivers near the top. Like I like Colin Lacey at Louisville. Like Jeff Brom, wide receiver 1, is just a meal ticket, and we don't really know who it's going to be between Lacey and Chris Bell. If it ends up being Lacey, like, he's going to smash that ADP. Hudson Clement at Illinois, same concept. Last year you had Pat Bryan and Zachary Franklin there that were just target hogs, and they got to replace that. Luke Altmaier, serviceable passer. And Illinois has a really easy schedule. So I do like Clement a lot. You can see my difference in rank versus ADP. So if Clement falls to me, obviously that's going to be my guy. Now I'm going to have to be getting him at an ADP value, though. Then there's a potential Miami stack that we could build if we wanted to. Josiah Trader and Carson Beck. That's interesting. And we could even make it a 3-teamer and put Elijah Lofton in there. Interesting. Yeah, we'll see what comes back to me. Another thing I do want to mention, though. So last year on the podcast, because if you guys are just here for best ball, you might not know, but I do a DFS podcast for a lot of the college football slates, right? Dylan Raiola, we kind of made fun of last year because he kept getting priced up because he was just, this guy that had a big name and a good schedule, and people loved him, and he looked like Patrick Mahomes, big time recruit, yada, 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 right? And he kept getting priced up in DFS, but didn't actually score any fantasy points. Well, he ended the season quite good because Dana Holgorsen took over as offensive coordinator or play caller or something like that. But Dana Holgorsen was the mind behind the end of Nebraska's season. Now Dana Holgorsen is the play caller. They're going to be a fairly competent offense this year. And so I think that Raiola, even though he doesn't run at all, is not a bad option for these drafts. And I think his receivers like Dane Key, Ja'Cory Barney, I think are really, really good options at the receiver position, if I'm being honest. In the chat, it says, C Slave, what's up with Trevor Pena fall? Is it because he has no team under his name or because Penn State is around everything? It's absolutely because of Penn State. Like watching them play against Notre Dame, I don't know if they completed a pass to a wide receiver in that game. Like they just don't really throw the ball to their wide receivers. And Pena was great at Syracuse. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think that the system's a good fit at all. And so I think that's why he's falling. I have not drafted him at all yet for that reason. I'm going to go ahead and take these 2 picks, and then I'm going to get caught up with the next of the comments. I want Hudson Clement if he falls. I'm just going to be honest about that. Like he is very high in my rankings. I've got pretty high exposure to him so far. If he doesn't fall, I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board. But I think I have an idea. Let's see what Michael does here. Drew Aller, not a bad selection. I'm going to go Hudson Clement here. All right, so now what I'm thinking is I'm thinking of taking CJ Baxter right here, and I'm going to try to get Rivers on the comeback. So I'm taking Baxter, right? So here's my entire thinking about that. Texas, the last 2 seasons, has supported 2 running backs basically on a weekly basis. 2023, it was Blue and Baxter. 2024, it was Blue and Wisner, right? Because they're just an offense that they score so many points, and their schedule through the middle of the portion of the season is so weak that they're going to be having a ton of games where they just score 49 points and running backs just have 2 touchdowns for no reason, right? Baxter should be healthy by week 1. I really liked what I saw out of him in his freshman season. And as a Texas fan, I'm obviously a little biased, right? But I think that that's a guy that I can bring in as my 4th running back. And when he gives me a good week, it's going to be a week where it's going to be good enough to start because he's going to be scoring touchdowns, right? So I really feel good about that Baxter pick there. Let me get caught back up on the chat now. I'll put the board up, though. I think y'all tell me in the chat, is the board easier to view, or would you rather see the picks? Anyway. Let's see. Darren says, if Lacey could stay healthy, pissed me off so bad. Yeah, same. Like, he showed up for the Notre Dame game and was great against the best defense he played all season, and then disappeared again. Philip says, how much weight do you put on ADP in these drafts? I've noticed a lot of guys I'm high on in my ranks are way lower according to ADP. Yeah, so I kind of use ADP as a predictive metric, if that makes sense. Like, I'm kind of using that. Now, granted, there's going to be a lot of variance, right? Like, there's going to be some drafts where you see guys go way before or way after ADP, like Bo Bud right here taking Steve Angeli at 114. I wouldn't do that, but I get the argument for it. He's going to be the starting quarterback on an air raid offense that's got a pretty weak schedule, right? I get the argument for it, but generally, guys are going to draft close to ADP. So you can kind of know, dang it, my whole plan and kind of what I was talking about was like Eric Rivers' ADP was 141. So that allowed me to, I thought I could push him to this round and have my stack with Haynes King because obviously I don't know where he falls on everybody else's ranks, but I'm kind of just predicting how far he's going to fall. And I'm trying to get the guys that I like with the most value as possible. So I'm kind of using ADP to predict how much it goes. And then we got Michael says, you help me make money on PGA DFS. So I just joined your Patreon. glad to hear that because PGA is wild because some tournaments are like great and then some are like, oh boy, like last week at the John Deere I got wiped out because I played Ben Griffin. But the US Open was a really good week. The Memorial was a decent week. The RBC Canadian Open was great. We had Sam Burns and Ryan Fox in the core. I know if you don't follow golf, y'all probably have no idea who I'm talking about. That's okay. This came up quicker than I thought it was going to. Let me just go ahead and take a running back here. I'm going to go Braylon Russell. And I think now would be a great time to take a tight end. So what I'm looking at here. So obviously going by my rankings, they're a little bit different here. Luke Reynolds concerns me because like I don't even know if he's going to start. Like that, I've not heard good things there. Terrence Carter, Texas Tech doesn't really use the tight end a whole lot. Let's go with Jack Felling. Like this is a guy that's just really talented and kind of in a tiebreaker. I'll bet on talent. Let's see. Catching back up on the comments. Philip, should I just get my guys? To a certain degree, yes. Especially if you're doing a lot of drafts. Like if you're doing a lot of drafts, like I'm kind of like an addict to the point where like I will check my exposure before every draft and be like, oh, I've got that guy at like 60%. Maybe I can let off of him for this one. Or like, you know, I've only got this guy in 2 drafts. This is a guy I need to go out and target. But yeah, like use ADP to predict, try to get as much value and try to build rosters that make sense. But if you've got your guys, go out and get them. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do here. Like with who I've picked, like Yassine Willis, one of my guys. Dylan Jones, one of my guys. McAllister and so on, like all 4 of my receivers, we talked about how I have them ranked so far ahead of ADP. So like I really am trying to go out and get my guys. Still getting caught back up here. I think flipping back and forth when you can think of it is best. I like seeing the board and players available. Yeah, I'm trying to do as much as I can here, navigate it, and also like not miss my picks. Fantasy Football Garage got wiped on Ben Griffin too. Took Fox from my one and done this week. I did the same. So I took Adam Scott in one of my leagues, Ryan Fox in the other. Pending results, see how that goes. Darren, will you take a flyer on Jackson Arnold, or is Auburn where QBs go to die? I will always take shots on mobile quarterbacks, no matter where they end up, because there's just a chance that they just mess around and run for 100 yards and give you a good week. Jackson Arnold could be that guy. So I will absolutely take a shot on Jackson Arnold. Hugh Freeze is kind of a quarterback whisperer. You look at what he did with, what's the guy's name they had there last year? Peyton Thorne. Like Peyton Thorne is not very talented. I think that Jackson Arnold's way more talented than he was. So I'll absolutely take a shot on a guy like Jackson Arnold. Now, I think this is going to be a good opportunity, if everything goes according to plan, to take one of my favorite sleepers here at quarterback this time around. Now, another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to look at what Lake Show's got going on. He's got 4 quarterbacks already. He's probably not likely to take one. So I think I might be able to get my quarterback, but is there another guy that we like before that? Farouk is an option. I don't know why Underdog doesn't have the teams on some of these guys yet. TJ Harden is at SMU. That's not a bad option, but I have 5 running backs now. Quasi Gilmore, potential UCLA wide receiver 1. UCLA is not going to be like this walkover scrub team that they were last year again this year. So I don't think the UCLA guys are a bad look. Like Nico is the best quarterback they've had in a while. Nico's already been taken, hasn't he? Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to get CJ Carr. Also, another thing, if you guys do check my rankings, you will notice that I have Jake Retzlaff completely off the board. I just don't know where he ends up. I'll put him back on the board when I know where he lands. But the last thing I want to do right now is take him at his current ADP somewhere and have him go to somewhere where he's just going to be handing the ball off 40 times a game. That's just not a prediction I want to make. So I'll factor him back in when he ends up on a roster. Jaleel Farouk, there was kind of a, I would say an easy pick for me. Maryland having to replace Caden Prather and Ty Felton, that's a lot of targets up for grabs with Felton and Prather gone. And that freshman quarterback, Malik Washington, that's supposed to be the starter, what if he ends up being good? If he ends up being good, then we could end up in a situation where where you could just get a lot of production out of that Maryland passing attack. All right, now here's one thing I need to start doing. I need to start checking my bye weeks. So I am going to actually pull up like a rankings guide that I bought from some other people that do some really good work at the CFF site, and I'm going to check my bye weeks at my quarterback spot. So Haynes King 6-11. Need y'all to help me remember this. 6-11. Josh Hoover is. Oh, I got to find Hoover on this list. 2-10. Okay, so both of them don't overlap at all. And then Pavia 7-12. Okay, so there's no overlap between the three of them. That's like perfect. Taylor 4-11. Willis 7-12. No overlap there. And then Dylan Jones. Russell 6-11. Okay. Yeah, I'm good. I'm not going to have a whole lot of overlap. The receivers I won't even worry about because I'm going to take two more. Yeah, I'm good on like bye week overlap. Somehow that worked out perfectly, y'all. All right, now back to the drafting at hand. Roman Hemby, they're really solid pick. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking one of these two here tight ends. Ooh, I could go full on Notre Dame stack here and get Raritan and get Greathouse. Ooh, don't tempt me with a good time. Yeah, let's do that. All right, so real quick. So you'll notice in the rankings, I have pretty highly Luke Haas and Eli Raritan. I think those two are like ideal tight end twos. And what I mean by that is this. They're guys that play on good offenses that are going to score a ton of points that are likely to score touchdowns. And if I'm drafting my tight end one before them, like a Velling or like a Sadiq or a Jack Andrews, then I want my tight end two to have touchdown equity, right? And if they have touchdown equity, then it means that they're just more likely to like give me 8 or 9 points on a week where my first tight end fails. And so Raritan and Haas, like those, they're perfect for that situation for me. And I really think that that's a solid way to attack the tight end spot. Now, I do really like Ja'Cory Barney. You can see where he's at in my rankings. Maybe I could get lucky with him coming back around. Like, so if you do a lot of NFL best ball drafts and you're watching this, you can probably relate to what I'm saying. But ADP at the end of drafts just gets so wonky because some guys aren't even being drafted. So many guys, have somebody like me that's like just a huge fan and is going to take them way ahead of their ADP. And so ADP at the end of draft is super unpredictable. So at the end is where I'm really going to focus on getting my guys. And dang, two receivers I was actually thinking about late round targets just got taken. So make that 3 in a row. Holy crap. So Draylon Miller, if you watched Colorado last year, Draylon Miller was like their screen guy and their jet sweep guy. If you play college football 26, the jet touch pass, right? And if he's going to get those this year for that offense that doesn't have Shedeur Sanders, doesn't have Travis Hunter, is not going to have a run game to speak of, he's going to rack up points in fantasy quite a lot. And so I like the idea of taking him at all. It doesn't have a team listed. He's Colorado. Trell Harris from Virginia. Offense that really feeds a wide receiver one. You think Malik Washington, you think Malachi Fields. There's probably one I'm missing. He's now filling in that role. Chandler Morris is a very competent passer. I love what this guy did with his late stack. This was a great example of what I was talking about earlier of getting a late quarterback like a Chandler Morris and Trell Harris right after. Love that idea. And then Micah Mays is another guy that I'm going to target late. So Wake Forest campus is about 15 minutes from my house. So I know a lot of people who are fans of the program, a lot of people who, I don't have like any inside sources or anything like that, but I know some people that follow Wake Forest and they're really high on Micah Mays. They're like, yeah, we need to keep this guy out of the portal. So he might be a guy that ends up having a breakout year as Wake's wide receiver one. And I do think the Wake is going to be competent offensively, especially considering they got that weak ACC schedule. Now, we're seeing a really big run on late quarterbacks here. That does not bode all that well for a guy in my position where I really want to get a fifth, but I don't really have any strong feelings about anybody that's left. Like I said, I'm not touching Retzlaff. Now, you could make the argument like, well, what if he ends up at somewhere that inflates that value? Yeah. What if he ends up not playing college football at all? Well, like I said, I'll put him back in my player pool. There's going to be drafts after he declares. Because plus, what if like he could go somewhere and be a backup because he's going to have like 2 weeks to learn a playbook that all the other guys have had a lot of time. What am I thinking here? You know what? I already went with Farouk as a receiver. Why not go ahead and get Washington as a stack? Like we talked about last time, I'm getting Ja'Cory Barney, getting that Nebraska offense. I like that idea. Now I've got 7 receivers, so I'm probably good on receiver. I've got 2 picks left. I'm probably going to go 1 quarterback, 1 running back. Let me think. I'm really thinking hard here. Bryce Underwood's tempting. Bryce Underwood's really tempting. Nah, I'm going to go with the stack. I'm going to go Washington. Did I get it in time? Yes. All right. Yeah. Let's see. I need to get caught back up here. Really like these drafts. So many players in every pool, or every draft is totally different. I agree 100%, especially the ends of these drafts. You see a lot of really wild selections. And some guys that I had to go back and check my ranks and make sure like that's a real person. Oh, cool. I'm a few hours away from you. Yeah. I live in what they call the Piedmont Triad of North Carolina. It's 3 otherwise irrelevant cities that just sprawl into a bunch of suburbs, Greensboro, High Point, and Winston-Salem, and I live in said suburbs. Darren Chandler Morris will be great until he gets blown up on big hit and then stats go down. Yeah, it's kind of what happened at North Texas. Thoughts on Bryce Underwood? Yeah, so what kind of got me to get on Bryce Underwood is I think about what J.J. McCarthy did there, right? And J.J. McCarthy was never a guy that would get you like 25 fantasy points in a game. He consistently gets you like 18 because their offense was always like good. And we're playing best ball. We need ceiling outcomes. So I just don't really think that's the type of environment that you're going to get a lot of ceiling outcomes. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe he is totally wrong. Maybe Sharon Moore is secretly an air raid guy. I don't know. I will say one of my favorite late round wide receivers, and this is a little bit of kind of local knowledge, Omega Blake for Arkansas. He transferred there from Charlotte, which is my alumnus, Charlotte 49ers. We were very average last year in the AAC, but unfortunately we had a very difficult AAC schedule. It's the same case again this year. But Omega Blake was a revelation. Like they were just throwing the ball downfield to this guy, and he had some massive games. And now he's going to Arkansas where they've got to replace Andrew Armstrong. They've got to replace Isaac Tesla. He could be in for a big year. And I think he's a great late round wide receiver selection. So let's see what I'm looking at. Because like I said, I want a running back. So I've got the option to go with some offenses that I kind of already have stacked, right? I've got Cedric Alexander from Vanderbilt I could take. I could go with Nate Palmer out of TCU. I'm not really interested in that. Fluff Bothwell from Mississippi State. That is interesting because that guy was really good at South Alabama. Jacoby Williams, Texas Tech. We don't really know who's going to start at Texas Tech yet. Like, it should be Joyner. Joyner's the projected starter, but Jacoby Williams was really good in that bowl game. Let's see. I am really in thought here. I'm hoping that Michael takes his time. No, not really. Okay. I am going to go with Fluff Bothwell, ? Yeah, Fluff Bothwell. Why not? All right. So, yeah. So that was live draft number 1. Philip says, I'm in a small town. Oh, I actually know. I've vacationed in Carolina Beach before, so I've driven to Wilmington. It's kind of crazy how I-40 just ends. Like if you live in most of America, you've probably driven on I-40. It goes like all the way across the country, and then it just kind of ends in Wilmington. It's kind of weird. Steve says, yeah, I agree. I'm curious to see how McCarthy looks in the NFL. Wonder if his underdog ADP will pay off. Good scheme system there. Yes, I I am a big JJ McCarthy guy in NFL fantasy this year. I have I'm in 3 dynasty leagues. And I have him on my roster in 2 of them because I think the guy just has it. And I think at Michigan, I don't think he was really allowed to showcase the arm and the talent that he actually has because of the system he was in. I think that when he gets in the Kevin O'Connell system, which is a derivative of the McVay system, I think he's going to be great. I really do think that. And then Darren, Biff and the cutoff shirts being fired makes me a Charlotte hater now. Bring back Biff. Yeah, if you don't know what Biff's talking about, which you might not because we were irrelevant, Biff Poggi was he was the head coach at Charlotte that was formerly the associate head coach at Michigan, that was formerly the head coach of St. Francis in Baltimore, and HBO made a documentary about him called The Cost of Winning, I think was the name of it. Basically, he was a former hedge fund manager that just decided, you know what, I don't have to work anymore for a living. I'm going to go coach high school football, and I'm going to pump a lot of money into this football program that is inner city Baltimore, underprivileged kids, and I'm going to help them out, but also try to build a winning program. And he was great in high school. He was great at Michigan. He wasn't bad at Charlotte. We were showing improvement. He got him to 5-7, 1 game away from a bowl game, was literally paying NIL dollars out of his pocket because he has so much money, was like buying uniforms and like upgrades to facilities out of his own pocket, which is not something that other colleges can do. And Charlotte fired him. And I was really hoping to see what Biff could have done, but he was also known for wearing like cut off t-shirts, and it was a really dumpy look on the sidelines. I was not the biggest fan because like that's all anybody knew him for. Like he became like a cult hero because of that, but he's actually a super interesting story, and wish him the best of luck wherever he ends up. But all right, that's going to do it for this draft. So let's see what we ended up with. So we ended up with my 101 Darius Taylor, solid quarterback room with Haynes King, Josh Hoover, Diego Pavia, CJ Carr, one of my late round sleepers, and then Malik Washington to complete the stack. Like I said, I like the idea of late stacks. And so I was able to get Washington. I was able to get multiple Notre Dame guys with CJ Carr. I was able to get Farouk to pair with Washington. Kind of like how this team set up. Now, I say that and watch this team just totally dud on me, but I was able to kind of fit the general draft format that I wanted, was able to get some of my guys. I like it. And definitely had fun drafting here on stream. But now, unfortunately, because it took so long for my son to go down to bed and took so long for people to join the draft, it is now 11:30. So I'm going to head on to bed. I've got an early morning ahead of me tomorrow, so I'm going to get on to bed. But I appreciate you guys tuning in. Was hopefully able to give you guys some good insight and some good advice on these underdog drafts. We'll be back here posting or doing more live drafts throughout the summer. So make sure you're subscribed. You'll know when we go live. And if you're interested in the underdog ranks, those are available on the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. But yeah, this was just the first of hopefully many college football drafts that we're going to be doing here this year. And that kind of the first wave of college football content, because as you guys know, once the season starts, it's DFS time, right? So hope you guys enjoyed the stream. Best of luck to you guys in your underdog drafts. And like Darren said, if you're doing any other DFS like me, I'm doing golf for both tournaments. Best of luck to you guys in that. Hope you guys enjoy watching. Thank you guys for watching this point, and I will see you guys next time.